My name is Brian Runciman from BCS. I'm speaking today to Clive Shepherd from the eLearning Network and Laura Overton from Towards Maturity about e-learning. Clive, can we come to you first, please? There seem to be many different interpretations of the term e-learning. What does it mean to you?
Well, you're right that there are many different interpretations and no two people seem to agree on what it means. But really the clue's in the word. It's just simply the use of computers and computer networks as a channel to, in some way, facilitate the learning process. Not one particular use, but any possible use. And that can go as far as what often people see of self-paced learning as one of the main manifestations of e-learning, but it could also be using networks as a way of running live events or watching videos online or collaborating with your colleagues online. So it's a very broad field, but really all we're talking about is using computers and networks as a channel. And that's the simplest way of putting it, I think.
So there seems to be a lot of interest in e-learning at the moment. What do you think is driving that, Laura?
Well, we've done quite a bit of research recently, and about 300 organisations kind of took part. And the things that are really driving it right now, particularly in these kind of economic climate, are areas of they want more efficiency to improve quality, and are really looking at kind of driving through some business issues for them. Some might be improving their customer satisfaction, some might be about looking at new areas of productivity, organisational change. So there's a lot of reasons why people are actually looking at learning technologies now, but from a learning perspective, the top ones are about improving quality, flexibility, access, and also about reducing costs. And in fact, we've found that even in the recession, that about 50% or more of organisations we talk to are actually increasing the amount of their training budget that they're allocating into this area at the moment for a whole range of different reasons. So it's quite diverse, the drivers at the moment.
And that's positive, isn't it? But e-learning has had a lot of criticism in the past. Has that been fair, do you think?
I think some of it has been fair. I think a lot of the initial adoption of learning technologies is often done as a result of people being kind of fascinated by doing something new. And often because we can, we're trying it out without any kind of real thought about where it's actually adding value into the business. It's often been seen as a bolt-on or as a quick way of actually taking some notebooks and sticking them online and sticking them on screen and calling it e-learning. And often in that situation you haven't got engagement, the learner doesn't feel supported, they're not able to kind of connect with their peers, often can't even connect with the trainers, so they can feel very, very isolated and as though it's not relevant to them. But so some of the criticism is there, but we've also seen that there are organisations who are a lot more mature in their use of learning technologies who are really kind of opening up the opportunities that technology can give to them and reaping the benefits from them as well.
So to take a specific example, Clive, there's the concept of self-paced e-learning. Has that been overemphasised in your view?
Well, I think it has, and I think that's a historical thing really, because well before we had the connectivity using intranets and the internet, most computers were seen as standalone devices, and if you've only got a standalone device, you can the only really option you've got is to use that for self-paced learning. Self-paced learning has a lot of advantages. I don't want to play that down, and learners tell us that they really do like being able to work at their own pace. They like being able to take learning in small chunks rather than in large doses, if you like. That's definitely the case. But nobody, or very few people, would actually say that they would want that as a predominant form of learning. So in some respects, we've had that heritage of self-paced learning back from the days before computers were connected. Now they are connected. E-learning is a much broader field, and there are many more opportunities. So I think we've got this legacy which we have to try and sort of purge ourselves of. Not completely, because self-paced learning has a very, very big role to play as a component in a training strategy, but we mustn't get fixated on the fact that e-learning equals isolated learning, because I think that in itself is one of the things that puts learners and other trainers slightly, in some cases, in opposition to the idea.
Now, traditionally that's been quite expensive as well, hasn't it? Is that an issue that should be taken into account, especially bearing in mind the current economic climate?
Yes, well, I mean, the arguments about cost and expense have always been a difficult one, because if you have a large audience, you may have an audience of tens of thousands of learners in large organisations. If that's the case, then you can afford to spend a lot of money and time creating a very nice product, because it's going to be amortized, if you like, over a large audience. It's the same argument as the money you'd spend in putting together a Hollywood movie. It's justified by millions of viewers. I think that in that case, there are huge cost savings that can be made. I think that what we're seeing now is the same as we're seeing in, having mentioned Hollywood, I think that's a very good analogy, because just as we're seeing everything from Hollywood through to corporate video like this, through to YouTube self-made videos, the same is true of web content and e-learning content, that it's feasible to mix at every quality level for different sizes of audience, and for some things which are very short shelf life and some which are obviously going to be used for a very long time. So we can be much more flexible about the issue of cost and time than perhaps we did in the past.
E-learning is actually now raising expectations for employers, isn't it, that they will have things delivered in a different way now? Are there concerns for the organisation in that change of viewpoint?
In terms of the employers themselves, the actual implementation, I think with there's new forms of learning coming through that people are expecting. They're using their own technologies for doing their own learning. But I think what the challenge is for organisations is there's such a mix of learners that they have. What we found again in our survey was that this year, compared with 2 years ago, that a lot of people are looking at learning technologies to really start to engage new generation of learners, the Generation Y, who are constantly looking at technology, constantly using their mobile phones, constantly connected with each other. And they are expecting to learn and to do things and to work in really very, very different ways. So a lot of organisations are starting this year for the first time to say, how are we going to address these needs, because our current methods aren't going to be able to handle that. So it's putting some challenges, I think, on organisations to actually think about the learners, the individuals that they've got, the people that they need to get up to speed to perform well in their organisation, and how to address their different needs. And this is giving them more tools in their hands to do that.
Excellent. Now, that seems to raise a wider question, doesn't it, Clive? Is e-learning appropriate for every person?
Yes, absolutely. And I think that I can understand that it would be seen that perhaps more studious learners or learners who are more self-contained are obviously going to feel more comfortable with working at a computer. But I think that that's no longer a relevant way of looking at this, because if you think about how computers are used in the home, they're used by every type of person, well, particularly when we're talking about young people. It doesn't matter whether you're a games player or you're a manic socializer, or you are somebody who likes to research and think about things and reflect. They've all got ways of using the internet and using computers at home. So it's really a question of what you present people with. I don't think that anybody has a problem with learning in any type of way in moderation. Clearly some people prefer some approaches to others. Some people prefer to be in groups, some people would prefer to be one-to-one, some people prefer to be on their own. But everybody's capable of learning in all those different ways. I think it's really a question about carefully balancing these approaches and making sure that you don't overuse one of the methods. The other thing is that you can deliberately design e-learning content, if that's what you're considering, to appeal to different types of people anyway. So there's no reason why you shouldn't use e-learning to deliver games and simulations that would appeal to people who wouldn't dream of sitting and reading a book, or don't want to be involved in a conversation, but they want to have more excitement. There's no reason why you shouldn't design e-learning that way.
Okay.